Welcome back to another edition of Whiteboard Wednesday. This is the sixth and actually final video in my series on Artful Discovery. And the topic today is, as you can see, understanding the buying process. We've talked about a lot of stuff in this series, specifically how discovery really is about a couple things. Right? Discovery is about understanding need, I'll put an extra E in there for fun. Buying process, which is our topic today, and ultimately ensuring that you understand the impact on a prospect's business that you're going to have. Hey, put a Y there. My spelling doesn't seem to be all that great today. Anyway, so this is understanding the buying process, and it's obviously something that is near and dear to my heart, and also something that I think a lot of salespeople don't do very well. Let's just talk about a typical conversation in a sales interaction. Let's talk about between salesperson, sales manager reviewing a deal. What are the things that come back when asked? So tell me about the buying process, right? I do a lot of deal reviews and work with prospects to help them get better at discovery. So I'll be reviewing with a salesperson. I'll say, so tell me where we are in terms of understanding the buying process. And the two things I hear most often, right? These should be pretty unsurprising. They have, guess what I'm going to say here? Guess what the word is? They have budget. Right? They told me they have budget. All right? Never heard that one before. And the second one is, I am talking to or know or can't get in front of the, what's the word here? Decision maker. Right? This is pretty much the extent of salesperson conversation, sales understanding the buying process in most cases today. This concept of, they have budget, right? Because they told us so, and they will tell us that either we're talking to or can't get to, or working to get to it, the decision maker. And I would say that, frankly, both of these concepts are strongly outdated. I, in fact, referred to budget as the B word, and my counsel to salespeople is stop using the B word. Right? The other thing I'll say to sales folks is there's no such thing as a decision maker in today's day and world, in today's age, in today's world. Very rarely are you going to be talking to a single person that has all the elements necessary to complete a deal, or even the concept of decision. And various methodologies, sales methodologies, I think have some really good constructs for thinking about this in terms of, are they an influencer, are they an economic buyer, a technical buyer? Pick which one you want, but understand that there's rarely one single person, out there, one person in the business world who's got the check, right? Who's the one person who can make the decision and guide the implementation and has, I'm trying to draw some money in his hand, right? And has the financial authority. So we have to remove ourselves from those concepts if we want to be successful. And let's just talk about budgeting for a second, because I think that's an instructive paradigm. And what I'll ask sales folks is, have you ever gone through a budgeting process? Have you been part of submitting a budget? Dealing with a real budget process. So yes, in fact, budgeting is something that is required in an organization to spend money, but it's not simply a matter of I have budget, it sits there, it's like I got a pot of money next to me that I can just kind of dig into any time. So if you think about the budget process, and I'll try to go briefly through this, departments and individuals typically on an annual basis have to submit their budget, right? They submit budgets, meaning what they think they're going to spend, etc. Budgets go through an approval process, right? And typically these happen on an annual basis, right? Where the budget is submitted and eventually signed off on, and lots of line items, etc. And there's always some pencil sharpening and having to reduce this. Very, very rarely do people say, "Oh, your budget's too small. Let me throw some more money at you." So there's got to be this approval process. Once that has gone on, what a lot of folks don't understand is that the concept of an approved budget and an allocation for that funding, the concept of a budget being allocated may be very different, right? So allocation could include the concept of what quarter, that's going to fall into, right? You might submit a budget for the year and have a lot of money planned out in Q4, but those investments may not be available to you in Q1. So that's really important to understand. When does the money come through? And then finally, I've never been in an organization, literally, that hasn't somewhere around, let's call it February, taken a look at their financials, at how they're tracking to plan from a revenue standpoint, and gone back and said, we need to adjust our budgets. So in a lot of cases, the budget that one thinks they might have, either year to year, quarter to quarter, is always subject to change. So be really careful of the B word. And then another thing that you want to understand here is that organizations regularly will take budget from one department. I don't know. Let's do it this way. Let's say, sales is here and marketing is here. And if the sales VP can basically make a case for better use of those funds, the CEO or the CFO can move that money around. So really, really important to understand that budgeting is a process. And when somebody says to you, I have budget, that's usually kind of a false indication of whether or not they actually know how this process works. Here's a tip, if you will. Instead of asking, do you have budget, or even allowing that, my favorite inquiry question from a discovery process standpoint, really two things. The first is, how does your company, right, typically go about investing? Right? Make it broad and an acknowledgement of the process involved. The second component, I would say, is I want to understand both, obviously how the company goes about investing money, but I also want to understand how that individual has experienced investing in particular projects. So I would say, what is, or maybe even describe to me, walk me through your personal experience in navigating, large purchases, large investment opportunities, etc., within this organization. So it matters how the company does this. Do they have a process that is transparent, that is known, and that is sane? And then, more importantly, has that person navigated, the budgetary process before? I think what you'll find is, for most individuals, right, we sell stuff all day long, which means we're always going through the sales process. They're not buying a lot of big ticket items, so their experience, their knowledge of, and their competency in the overall budgeting and allocation process may be very weak, and we have to understand that. So I think I've harped quite a bit here, on the budget process. Let's talk about the other components of the buying process that you need to understand, how they work, what they mean, what they do, etc. So these are just terms, if you will, and you can use them as you will. You can change them. You can ask your prospects to guide you around this. But most companies have fairly formal ways of thinking about, or need to have ways of thinking about, how they go about vendor selection. Right? How many times have you been part of a buying process, navigated all of the needs up front, etc., only to find out that there's a corporate policy that they have to get bids from 3 vendors, or some sort of overall corporate purchasing requirements, right? You got to make sure you understand any of these if you're gonna sell effectively. Let's see, and I got enough room there. Perfect. So that's really important. In a lot of organizations, regardless of the departmental budgetary process and requirements, there may be a finance review, right? In a lot of cases, this can sound or smell a lot like purchasing, right? But what's involved there? But sometimes for large purchases, literally finance, CFO sign off is required. I've had experience in my life with deals that have required board level sign off, right? It was of a sufficient value. Anything over $500,000 a year had to be signed off on by the board. Another area that's very much neglected is legal review, right? And I put that very much in the buying process. A purchase is a legal relationship. Ultimately, it involves the signing of some sort of agreement, and more often than not, legal has a say in that. And I sure would hate to get to the end of your quarter trying to close a deal, bring it over the finish line, only to understand that at that point in time, now we need to go through legal review even after we've agreed to all this, and that's going to take another 2 to 3 weeks. So don't let that get in your way. The last one I'll put on here, and again, this is probably a list we could keep going with, is signing authority. I'm always curious who signs the contract. What level of person can sign the legal agreement? What level of person can sign off on the PO? Right? Basically, you get this other concept of chain of command. But again, it's very unlikely that anything you're selling of magnitude is going to be something that you're talking to a single person who has the budget, the ability to allocate that money, sign the PO, sign the legal document, sign terms and conditions, etc. So this is just a small list of aspects of the buying process that you need to make part of your discovery process. I think it's so important that I actually advocate for a buying process conversation to be a dedicated discovery session. Sounds something like this. Hey, Mr. Prospect, we've been talking about your specific needs, your current environment, how we hope to drive impact for your business. One of the things I want to make sure we cover is an understanding of how you guys navigate through the purchasing process. How does your company go about investing in large ticket items or complex services, arrangements, etc. So I'd like to spend a dedicated conversation, maybe 30, 45 minutes, having you walk me through your personal experience with this, and I can share you sort of how we tend to do things. However you want to frame it, you can even provide an agenda based on things you want to talk about, because there's a good chance your prospect might not actually know all these things off the top of their head. Bottom line is, it's yet another area to have, right, I've said this a lot, a conversation. If you're not having a conversation about this, it's happening in the background, it's happening without your knowledge, and it could come back to bite you in the end. Thank you once again for spending a little time with me in the Whiteboard Wednesday. Should be a link down below here that you can click on if you want to get the whole series. Also sign you up to get my articles that I put out and guest blogs on a weekly basis. So if you missed some of the other ones or want to get them sent to your inbox, should be a link down here. If not, I'm going to look really silly. Other than that, look forward to seeing you next time on Whiteboard Wednesday.